If I'm not on LinkedIn right now, I know that some people, have been slow to adopt that, or maybe they've been with the same job for 10 years and things were going well. They planned to stay there longer, but now they've been laid off and they didn't have a LinkedIn profile. If they didn't have one before, shouldn't that be a top priority right now? Because that is very widely used.
Absolutely. I mean, that is your online resume, right?
Hmm.
When we're hiring people, I will get resumes. That's great. I know that's what someone submitted to me intentionally to represent themselves. And then I go do my own research. And yes, I very much expect to find a LinkedIn profile, and I find it 90% of the time. And when I go on there and there's not a lot of information, it is off-putting. Or if it doesn't match up with what someone just presented to me in terms of their skill sets and what they're doing, clearly, they're maybe not as interested in the position they just applied for, but I could tell they customized the resume to try to get this position, which is good, but you've got to pay attention to your LinkedIn profile. This is the modern, virtual resume in today's world. So LinkedIn's important, and they change the features all the time. So it's good for you to be up on all of the content and information that you can put on your profile.
For people who don't know, I mean, I think a lot of us see SEO, and some of us may even understand that that means search engine optimization. But I think a lot of lay people have no idea that, the math that goes into that and what that really means and what it really does for you. Can you talk a little bit about what that is, because you specialize in that, and any more ideas that you have to optimize if I'm being searched for? How do I help make that look good when somebody types my name in?
Absolutely. So first of all, SEO stands for search engine optimization, right? And that's what my company, Colorado SEO Pros, does for businesses. We essentially help businesses create strategies for their websites so they appear in search engines for the terms that their customers are searching for, right? So it really is about changing content and doing things so that you rise in search. If we think about how this applies in the job market, there's two different sides to this. One is, what does it actually look like when someone searches your name? And then the other one is some of the rules that search engines have that they operate by that then employers and job sites will use through applicant tracking systems, right? So there's actual systems that employers and large job sites will use to filter through resumes, and they use some of the same methodologies that search engines used way back when. So it's very simple versions. So first of all, on the first point, what I've seen is people do create their own personal websites, portfolio sites, right? And this isn't really tough to do today, right? Like there's Squarespace is a free site builder. Wix has the same thing, or you can do it for an inexpensive cost without ads. And you can kind of figure it out and do it yourself. You can have a good looking website that you've got your skills on there, projects, you can put portfolios, things that you've worked on. So you can build that out. Again, LinkedIn, social media profiles, same thing. There's a lot of social media websites out there. So if you really want to own the page when someone searches your name and maybe your profession, right? Your name and the location, then think about the different websites that you have access to that ultimately you could publish content about yourself, right?
If I were to create my own site, let's say, like you said, using one of these free services, first of all, no one is expecting this to be the site of sites. No one's expecting it to be the most, bells and whistly site out there with all kinds of incredible graphics and things going on. Secondly, though, that really does help me when someone goes and searches my name to see, what my history is, because that's one more thing now that's going to pop up maybe there at the top and maybe push down some older stuff or maybe some stuff that isn't so great.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And what you're starting to get into here is online reputation management, right? Which really is controlling, what it looks like when someone is searching for you. But you're absolutely right. And it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be some flashy, really sophisticated site with advanced functionality. Again, those site builders that I mentioned, Squarespace and Wix are the two most common. and you can build websites that look amazing.
Mm-hmm.
There's some drawbacks, for SEO if you're running a business and you really want to get advanced, but that's not what we're talking about. If it's just about presenting yourself in a professional way, I would go ahead and invest in getting a good headshot. I think that will go a long way for you and make sure that you can use that consistently across different websites. But if you're building your own website, like again, these website builders, you can build fantastic looking websites yourself. It's not rocket science. You're going to have to invest a little bit of time in learning the site builder, but it's not like you're coding from scratch and it's super technical. So it's definitely within reach.
So if you're going to lay out any money in this process, you might want to put a little bit of money into at least getting a really nice picture of yourself that is current and that's not grainy and pulled from your old phone that you took what you thought was a good picture 4 years ago.
I would say that is the first and best use of money. Absolutely right. And then make that picture consistent across your social media channels. Again, think about yourself like a brand that has a logo that's recognizable. I have one that I use, and it probably needs to be updated, but it's consistent across my social media and all my professional areas, so people identify, hey, that's Chris Rodgers, the SEO guy, and that's that consistent picture, so that's recognizable.
It's interesting too. You're in this realm where you're dealing with companies, and now is just such an odd time, and obviously, a lot of companies are sitting in the driver's seat now, whereas several months ago it seemed like there was sort of an advantage for the worker because the job market was so tight, and there weren't as many people looking. Now there's this glut of people looking for a relative few jobs. Is there any other trend that you're seeing from the perspective of employers? Is there any other advice that you would impart to people who are looking for jobs? Because what the other end is like. What the employers are saying and what the employers are thinking. What other advice might you give me if I'm looking for a job and I'm trying to make myself look better online, or looking for a job and trying to make myself look better in an interview? Like if you're interviewing me right now on Zoom for a job.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple things. We talked about having a good picture. I think that's critical. This probably doesn't need to be said, but when you put your resume together, it should be highly customized for the job that you're going after, right? And every time. So employers across the board, if it looks like you're just sending in a general resume, those are the first ones that are going to get dumped.
That's an
I
interesting
mentioned
point. So you should be tweaking it for each job that you're sending for.
Absolutely. And I know that gets tough because if you're out there blasting to tons and tons of jobs, that can get pretty tricky. So I think part of this is you're going to need to find a niche. You're going to need to find what you're really going after and then target in on those specific positions. If you just say, hey, I'm going after any job that's out there, how are you going to possibly present yourself to be a specialist in any one area? So I would start with research on the positions that you actually want. So certainly you've got to go out there and look, okay, where are there actual positions, right? Where are there opportunities, and how many of them are out there? That's where I would start. And then you can hone in on position. From there, you need to do research on, what do these position descriptions look like on the major job sites? And I would go in at a granular level and look at the specific skills, the software programs they're mentioning. Start looking at these position descriptions and start looking for keywords, the types of things that are going to be indicative of a match from, say, an applicant tracking system, right? Once you've gone in and identified these different positions, you can look at those keywords and start integrating them into your resume, also into your LinkedIn profile, right? And that's one of the ways that you can get past the applicant tracking systems.
Because
So that
that
your
is
resume,
basically, for people who don't know, that's an automated system, and it's going to look at your resume long before a human looks at your resume, and it may or may not, push you to the top. It could kick you out, essentially, if you don't have some of those keywords, because they don't want to waste the human's time.
absolutely. So if you've got 10,000 applications that are coming in resumes, and you've got to get it down to 250 so that it can go to the HR department, how are you going to do that? So these are systems that are doing it. So absolutely, I would do keyword research. I would understand the positions. I would make sure that that's in, your top description, that's down in skills and experience, that you're mentioning those keywords, software, specific experience. The other thing that I did want to mention as well is don't try to get too fancy on your resume, right? So if you're a web designer or a graphic designer, maybe you need to get a little bit more creative, but for the vast majority of us, stick to some fairly standard fonts. Don't try to go in and create an art masterpiece that you think is going to somehow stick out, because in the applicant tracking system, they may look at it and not be able to even decipher any of the information. So keep it pretty straightforward, easy to understand, easy to read. When someone's going through, again, 100 resumes, they're trying to disseminate information, right? If they come to one that has a bunch of colors on it and graphics and it's got this really innovative design, honestly, that can just be annoying because you don't have time and you're trying to figure out what you're looking at to get the information. So also I would say, keep it fairly simple in terms of your format. Don't try to innovate too much on your resume.
That is an interesting point. I have actually personally made that mistake in the past where I think and I was very proud of it, but I think that the resume it was too busy. It had, artsy stuff going on it. And, I'm in a field where that does matter to some degree, but it probably was distracting. And like you said, I didn't even think about the automatic gatekeeper, this computer system that's, scanning this before it gets to eyeballs and going, I don't even know what this is. Push that over there,
Right.
It's good advice, to be sure. And last thing I want to ask you, since you do deal with companies who are hiring and they're going through their processes to narrow down candidates, have you been hearing of a surge in the number of applicants for a single job? Have you heard about that trend? Just because we have so many people out of work, is that becoming a reality that for one job we're seeing more people apply for it, from what your experience has been?
I have not seen specific data around that.
Okay.
I have seen trends around remote work, right? And I think that we're seeing some big changes overall in workforce and organizational structure, where now companies are more open to remote work. So I think there's going to be more of those positions out there. To that point, you mentioned before other things that for interviews, pay attention to where you're doing your interview, right?
Yes.
Look at your background, right?
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily need to be super professional because people expect that you are at home, right? But you want to have a clean, organized background. You don't want like a bunch of clutter.
Right.
You need to show that, hey, I have a newborn baby, right? But right now someone's taking care of her, to make sure that I don't have kids running in or something. Because again, if you're doing an interview and potentially that's remote work, they're going to say, okay, well, is that the environment that this person is going to be working in, right? Are they going to be organized? Are they going to be focused? Are they going to be able to deliver? Or are they working at home in a chaotic environment? So pay attention to how you look in those interviews and some of that messaging that you're sending as well.
Well, it's just like that picture that you're putting forward. It is a representation of you. So if you have a background that's just crazy and chaotic, it might sort of make you seem like you are crazy and chaotic. I lied. I have one more question. I always tell people that you should always be looking for a job. And I don't mean that in the sense of you should always actively be like out, doing interviews, especially if you like the position that you're in right now. But you should always just kind of be following what's going on in the market, in your field, and just looking at opportunities, maybe networking a little bit, keeping that resume up to date. What do you say to people, especially in this time, as we've seen, sometimes jobs aren't as dependable as we thought they were when the world starts to change around us. Even if I think my job is stable right now with all that's going on, should I be looking? Should I be actively taking some steps? Have I been giving people the wrong advice, is what I'm asking.
No, I think you are 100% right. So one thing is staying on top of what's happening in your field, keeping that network active, understanding who are, if you were going out and looking for a job tomorrow, who is your competition and what are they doing? What are their skill sets, right? Should you be looking at potentially going and get some additional certifications or looking at doing an MBA, right? The other side of this is you're 100% right. Like it's hard to put all your eggs in one basket today in an employed position, because any one employed position, there is inherent risk, right? So the other thing that, I would say to be open to is developing additional streams of income,
Hmm.
right? Are there additional business opportunities and things that you could be doing on the side outside of your regular job to start developing that over time, right? Are there
Mhm.
opportunities for passive income streams that are out there that you might be able to develop over time? And I guess we all need to take a little bit step back from the traditional, hey, I'm going to go to college, I'm going to get a full-time job, and I'm going to keep it until I retire, and
Mhm.
start thinking, hey, how do I make money? How do I build streams of income? And how do I make sure that I've got a good safety net if something falls through, that I've got other options?
As you say, you're thinking of yourself as a brand there, and almost thinking of yourself as a business. Chris, thank you for taking the time. I know these are busy days, and the demands are a lot right now. But I really appreciate it, because I think that putting this information out for a lot of people, especially what they're going through right now, is very important. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.